I thought the cold would slow her down. It didn't. This is Whispering Narratives, where survival isn't promised and the dark plays for keeps. If you make it to dawn, join the pack. I learned the sound of true cold that night. It isn't the wind. It's the way things stop. The engine stutters, coughs, then dies like it's drowning under the snow. The dash lights dim to a sullen orange, and the heater's last breath is a tired sigh that fogs the windshield from the inside. Wipers freeze halfway through a swipe, 2 fingers splayed across a glass eyelid. The world shrinks to the car, me at the wheel, and Mara in the passenger seat with her head tipped back, mouth just open, breath threading out white. Come on, I say to the key. Live. It doesn't. The mountains let the silence settle. Back in, that felt silence, that pressure change you get when a storm has all the doors locked. Mara licks her lips. It sounds wrong, too loud in the quiet. Her tongue leaves a red smear, not blood. It's her lipstick, smeared from the kiss when we were still brave, when the road still felt like it led to a weekend of sleep and wood stove and the kind of privacy you don't tell anyone about. Her lashes tremble. She looks up at me with eyes, too wide, every reflection in them a quivering star. Cold? I ask, already knowing the answer. I'm layered like a sane person, thermal, flannel, jacket, hat. She's always warm, the summer kind of human I orbit for warmth. Tonight she's bare wrists and stubbornness, and still, I'm hot, she says, voice rough. It's inside hot, not skin hot. It's the 3rd time she said that, since we turned from the highway onto the mountain road, and every time it lands like a coin in the same dark fountain inside me. Wish you could call someone. Wish it was anything but what I think. I throw open my door. The wind slaps my face. Like a gloved palm, snowflakes sting like grit. They don't drift. They're thrown sideways, bright as teeth in the headlights that are already dimming. I circle to the hood, pop it with numb fingers, and haul it up. The engine is a metal heart that won't admit it's stopped beating. Steam ghosts up. There's nothing to fix that won't require a different universe. Back in the car, I rub my hands together and look at the map app that can't find satellites. No bars, no help, no line back to town. 10 miles behind us, a highway with 2, many truckers and not enough guardrails. 2 miles ahead, the cabin we rented, a black dot by a frozen lake, wood stove, generator, stocked woodpile, a picture that sold us on the idea of disappearance. We can walk, I hear myself say. Liar. It's 2 miles, maybe less. Mara makes a sound, half laugh, half, no, don't say it. It's a sound like the start of a cough that chooses hunger instead. She pulls her hands into her sleeves, then stops, staring at her own fingers. The nails are different. They aren't longer, not yet, but they're sharper at the edges, like something filing them from the inside. Her knuckles look swollen, her wrists look too thin. She wipes condensation from the glass with the heel of her hand and leaves a print. That's slightly wrong. The pad of one finger has a crescent indentation, as if she's been pressing it against a coin. Don't look at me like that, she says, not unkindly, like I'm the storm. I blink at her. I think of all the little changes over the last month, the way she started waking at 3 a.m., standing at the open window in a t-shirt while I begged the blankets back from her side. The way steak stopped needing salt for her, the way she laughed too quickly at dogs barking on TV, the way her pupils stayed blown in low light like the camera's aperture refusing to close. We joked. We always joke. That's how you keep the door shut. I'm not, I say. I'm just thinking about walking. Then we walk. She reaches for the door and winces. The tendons in her wrist move like cables drawn too tight. She smiles at me through it. You brought the headlamps? Yeah. I dig them. Out of the glove box and strap one over my hat, another over hers. When I adjust the band, her skin is fever hot. Snow hits her cheek and melts, instantly rolling down. Steam rises from her breath. You sure? It wants me moving, she says, and I pretend she means the cold. We step out into snow that bites at the shins through denim. The wind knocks the door against my calf. I swing my pack on: water, snacks, cheap first aid kit, hand warmers, a ridiculous little camping hatchet we never once used for anything more serious than splitting pretzels in half as a joke. I lock the car as if theft is our problem. The chirp is pathetic, swallowed. The road is a white ribbon with the edges torn off. Our headlamps cut tunnels that end 3 arm lengths away. The trees lean in, black-boned, shoulders hunched under. Ice. The storm takes our footprints and tidies them up in seconds like an obsessive god. We go single file. I break trail. She follows, her breathing paced to mine, except sometimes it slips. Sometimes it quickens, and I can hear it through the wind, ragged like running. Sometimes she makes a small sound in the back of her throat that is not a word and has too much of the forest in it. Almost there, I say at the first curve, because you have to feed hope every mile or it wanders off and dies. At the second curve, the trees go quiet. Not less wind, just quiet. The sound thins somehow, and in that thinness, I hear something else. A kind of slow, careful pad in the dark off to our right, level with us, not behind, not ahead. I stop, lift the headlamp, sweep the beam, snow glitter, trunks, the pale flash of a fallen birch, nothing else. And yet the hairs at the base of my skull move as if something blew on them. You hear that? I ask. Mara tilts her head like she's listening to a song I can't hear. Her mouth opens, the tendons in her throat stand out. It's close, she says, voice thin and far away. It's in the way the cold changes when it moves. Okay, I say, because what else is there? We keep going. The pad comes again after 20 steps, not trying to be quiet, just unhurried. A gait that knows how far you'll get and is fine with it. I take my hand from my pocket and reach back without looking. Mara's hand finds mine. Her fingers are so hot I yelp. She squeezes to apologize and does not let go. The bones of her knuckles feel bigger, or my gloves are thinner, or denial is strong enough to sand edges off. We crest a small rise. Below us, the road runs straight like a lit fuse toward a bank of black pines. Between 2 trees way down, I see a rectangle of dull orange. The cabin. The generator must be running. A light in the storm. Relief sours instantly with another thought. Who turned it on? The rental company promised it would be stocked, but they also warned we'd need to prime it. Did someone get here before us? Did we just step into someone else's night? See it? I say. Mara inhales like it hurts. I smell it. Smoke? I ask. Us, she says. And copper. A thin animal panic flutters low in me, wanting to jabber. We're fine. We get inside. We lock the doors. We get the stove going. We, she says softly. It's not a challenge. It's a question full of sorrow. Something big moves in the trees to our right. Not a trick of wind. The snow there shakes loose in a curtain. My headlamp snags the edge of fur, the color of creek mud, matted with something thicker than water. Then nothing. A wedge of darkness breaks from darkness and remelts into it. We run, I say, and we do, but in snow it's always a bargain. The storm taxes every step. The wind grabs the breath right out of my mouth and flings it behind me, and over that ripped breath I hear Mara's sounds change. Not louder, lower. The breath drops in pitch like a voice being tuned down. She stumbles and catches herself with her hands in the snow. When she stands, her palms are rimed white, not from frost but from the steam rolling off them, freezing instantly in the air. Don't, I say, like I can tell gravity what to do. I grab her elbow. It's a cable under skin. We run. The pad in the trees keeps pace, patient, a gentleman monster seeing us to our door. Between the last 2 pines, I glance back because I am an idiot. My headlamp paints the trunks in harsh theater. Light. There are marks there. Not claw marks. Not yet. The bark is polished in 4 vertical slicks about shoulder-width apart, the way wood shines where a body rubs it again and again, leaving oil and heat. Like something tall squeezes through there every night it eats. Don't look back, Mara says, and what breaks me open is not the command, but the way she begs it. We slam onto the deck of the cabin, boards hidden under a white hump. The door is black wood with a brass handle and a keypad. I punch the code with fingers that feel like props. Nothing. I do it again. The light winks green. The latch stutters. The door sticks on some ice ridge. Something brushes the back of my coat. Not grab. Brush. As if to measure me. We fall inside on a wave of wind and slam the door. The latch thunk is the best sound I've ever heard. The light overhead is dim but steady. The generator hums like a bee pinned in a jar. The cabin's heat is the heat of wood that's been waiting, the smell of pine cleaner and old coffee and something else, iron. There's a dark smear near the sink. My brain files it as rust and underlines the lie twice. Fire, I say, dropping the pack. Stove, layers, water, Mara's hand on my shoulder stops me. Her grip is careful the way people are careful with glass. Her eyes are wrong now. Not color. Structure. The pupil is too round, the iris band too wide, the sclera threaded with tiny capillaries like red frost. She smiles the way you reassure a child before you close the door on something they don't need to see. Lock the back door, she says. Then help me. Help you what? Not hurt you. I open my mouth. A low sound comes through the walls then, a sound that may be wind and may be the throat of a thing that has learned to harmonize with it. The kitchen window fogs from my breath. The smear by the sink is not rust. I smell copper too. Bathroom, Mara says and steps toward it like she's walking down a church aisle. Her gait is wrong in little ways. The knees a touch too smooth, the hips a fraction too loose, like someone took joints meant for walking and redesigned them for running on all fours. I lock the back door. The bolt slides into place like a small promise. In the tiny bathroom off the master, there's a mirror that has seen 100 ugly mornings. The light above it hums. Mara grips the counter. Her knuckles stand like knots. Her breath a raise. The mirror in frost feathers. Tell me I'm here, she says. Tell me I'm me. You're Mara, I say. You're my map home. She closes her eyes. The tendons in her throat jump. Under her skin, something moves. No sharp snap. No movie magic. A slow, deliberate shift like a creature turning over in bed. The sound it makes is meat and wood and the low complaint of a rope underweight. She bites her lip. The canines print through the flesh and do not quite break it. Outside, on the deck, something heavy steps once. The cabin's boards answer with a low human groan. The storm quiets for that one footfall as if to let us hear it clearly. The sound finds every hair on my body and teaches it to sing. Mara opens her eyes. We're going to need you to be brave, she says, and now there's a we in her voice that includes something I can't see yet. And the worst part is I miss her already. From somewhere deep in the pipes, the house exhales. From somewhere deeper, so does she. The bathroom is barely bigger than the tub, cheap rental tile, a mirror that lies kindly by softening edges, a fan that rattles like teeth in a cup. I flip the lock and it clicks with all the authority of a toy gun. Mara's reflection stares. Back at me, fog-wreathed, eyes bright enough to tax the bulb. Options, I say, because lists feel like control. Heat on, cold off, keep your body temp down, or ice. We have ice packs. She shakes her head once, hard. Cold makes it worse. Worse? It wakes it, she says, and the word it lands between us like a third person. Her wrists flex on the sink lip. The porcelain complains. I grab the hand towels and drape them over the edge like a napkin at a dinner for bad gods. The rental's first aid kit is a plastic coffin with gauze, aspirin, nothing with bite. Under the sink, spare toilet paper, a bottle of blue cleaner duct tape that looks like it has seen exactly this kind of night only in jokes. Restraints, she says too calmly. Belts, towels, door hinge, do it now, love. My hands move while my mind stares. Belts from our bags, 2 leather, 1 canvas. I double them, thread through handles, anchor to the cold water pipe under the sink. The pipe knocks once as if the house disapproves. Towels twist into ropes. I cinch a loop around the base of the heavy vanity leg, test it like I'm about to rappel into a mouth. The little hatchet rattles against my thigh and my pack, ridiculous and exactly right. Mara breathes through her nose, slow, counting, as if 2 more breaths might put her back in the car where we still laughed at the storm. Her skin flushes then pales, tied on a private shore. Her lips dry in an instant and crack at the center like ice splitting. Say it, she says. What? Say the rules. Her voice is clipped, the way it gets when she needs the math to be clean. It's the voice she uses to talk down from panic. It's the voice she used once when I thought I was going to pass out on a crowded bus, and she built me a small room with her words and my breath. Rule 1, I say, because I'll do anything she asks. I don't unlock that door until sunrise. Even if I beg, she says, even if you beg. Rule 2, she says, if I get out, you go. You don't fight me. You go through the window and run for the lake. I don't like water. You love water, I say helplessly, thinking of summers, her shoulders flashing in river light. I did, she says, and it rips. The thing outside steps on the porch again, politely, like a neighbor about to knock. The boards groan and settle. The generator hiccups and catches. Somewhere in the walls a pipe bangs 3 times in an uneven rhythm like a code. The bathroom mirror hums with our breath. I take her wrists. Heat knifes my palms. The tendons jump like live wire. Her nails aren't nails anymore. They're decisions. I thread the doubled belt around her left wrist, tighten until she inhales through her teeth. The sound is human. I commit. Then the right. She doesn't flinch this time. Her eyes stay on mine. The pupils feel too deep to be pupils at all. They feel like wells for voices. Ankles, she says, the word almost a growl that she smooths into speech. We move to the tub edge. I loop the canvas belt around both ankles, pull it snug, anchor to the leg again with the towel rope. When I test the knot, she tenses, muscle leaping blessedly human, and then relaxes. The belt creaks. Okay, I say. Okay. Her jaw tightens. The bone there is not the bone I know. It's accumulating. The line of it pushes forward, a bare millimeter. The skin complains across it like a sheet being pulled too tight. She swallows. The swallow clicks, loud enough I glance at the door, expecting an answer. The fan rattles. The light flickers once, twice. Listen to me. Her voice goes soft, a stealth in soft. I will say things that sound like me. They will be aimed exactly at the places that keep you. Don't let me in. You are in. I know, she says, and something like apology, like hunger, like grief crosses her face so quick it's a shadow cast by a faster shadow. Give me the cloth. I wad a clean towel and hand it to her. She bites down on it. Blood smears instantly at the corners. Her canines are pressing the towel into a shape I don't want to name. She nods. Good. Okay. We lean her back against the vanity. Her breath saws the towel. The mirror fog blooms with each exhale like time-lapse frost flowers. The porch step creaks again. The lock on the bathroom door is a child's idea of a lock. I slide my belt knife's sheath off and wedge the knife spine first into the door jamb as a dead man. It's theater. It's for me. You'll need... She stops. Her tongue works dumb muscle shapes behind the towel. When she speaks, syllables come wrong, the mouth forgetting human choreography. Salt, not silver. Salt is what keeps the world out. If you draw a line and you mean it. Mean it? I glance at the blue cleaner bottle. Sodium chloride? No, genius, that's table.
Salt. The kitchen. We don't have... She shakes her head once, violent. No time.
There is a new sound now, and it isn't the porch or the wind or the house or the thing in the trees. It's the world pulling tighter around the shape of what's coming. It's the sound rooms make when the thing meant for them arrives. Her left wrist bows the belt. Leather protests. The pipe pops, then holds. A tendon in her forearm stands up like a cable ready to take a car's weight. Sweat beads on her upper lip and freezes and melts, her skin like weather. She groans low in her chest, and 50,000 years of prey in me stands up and looks for a hill. I talk, because talking is a thin rope in a long fall. I tell her stupid things. The first time we saw snow together, and she told me every snowflake looks like a city from far away. The time her dog took my sock hostage and made me pay a treat ransom. The way she burns pancakes on purpose because she claims char is flavor. Her eyes squeeze shut. The towel squeals between her teeth. Something shifts under the skin of her shoulders, the scapulae clicking like knuckles. Ligaments slide like ropes being greased. Her collarbones re-articulate with a noise that will live in the soft parts of me forever. She moans, and the pitch is wrong. The mirror catches a flick of tongue that is too rough, too wide. A line of dark rises under her skin along each finger, thin and straight, like black veins being drawn by a vindictive artist. Almost there, I say, though there isn't a there at the end of this. There's only through. The generator coughs hard enough to hiccup the lights. Everything shivers, then holds, then the quiet, like a toy being wound down, lands. Out. Power gone. Dark eats the bathroom. The only light now is the headlamp on my hat. Its beam slices the fog into milk. In that cone I see the change happening like an eclipse, never cut, always curve. Her cheekbones climb. Her brow ridge takes one long, patient breath right through the skin. Her ears, God, twitch. She makes a strangled noise and her ankles kick once against the belt, the sound an anvil's laugh. Stay with me, I say, and she hates that, I can feel it, hates the cliché, loves it anyway. Her pupils blow the last of human daylight out. The porch groans. The front door rattles in its frame, not a knock, not a test. A draft snakes under the bathroom door and carries a smell with it. Wet fur, iron, something like wild onions ripped from black dirt. It gets in my sinuses and sets up a memory of a forest I've never walked. Rule 3, she says around the towel, words torn into pieces and shoved through. If I say your name in your mother's voice, don't answer. How? She sees my face and almost smiles, the old Mara flexing beneath the storm, and then the storm takes her. Her spine arches, a bow pulled by a god. Every muscle stands at once, a body learning what else it can be. The belts scream raw, real, honest. The pipe under the sink groans, and we both listen to it like it's a friend clearing its throat. Look at me, she pants. Towel hanging from her teeth, eyes feral and wet. Look, love. Look. I can hold in your eyes longer. It helps me. Remember. So, I look, and I tell her who she is while bones rearrange their seating chart. I tell her middle name, the one she won't let anyone use. I tell her the exact place on her forearm where a thumbprint bruise lingered from a tubing rope in July. I tell her the story of the first time she saw me cry and pretended not to. She squeezes her eyes shut. Her face is in 2 arguments. The nose lifts, subtle, a promise. The mouth reshapes itself around teeth that want different real estate. Her breath rakes the towel. The belt knots click. Something outside the bathroom door drags a claw or a key down the wood in a straight, unhurried line. It stops at the latch. "Don't," I whisper to the door, or the night, or God. "Don't." The latch jiggles once, then again harder. On the third shake, the little lock pops, dumb metal surrendering to a patient hand, the knife spine wedged in the jam holds. Barely. Mara laughs. It isn't her, but it uses her mouth to honor the effort. Then her head tips back and the laugh peels up into a sound the pipes cannot forgive. Not a howl. Not yet. A rehearsal for it. The mirror fogs and then clears as if it wants to see too. "Go," she says, suddenly clean human for 3 syllables. "Window. Now." I don't move. My hands are on her wrists, my forehead to hers, my mouth making vows I didn't know I had in stock. Outside, something leans its patience against the door. Inside, something leans its future against my love. The generator coughs in the distance like it wants back in the story. The fan rattles with no power like memory. The headlamp flickers and steadies, and in that instant of strobe, I see Mara's canines break the towel and her eyes flood with old moonlight. On the 4th shake, the knife drops to the tile with a small perfect ring. The door begins to open. The door opens like a mouth that doesn't need permission. A crack first. Cold air knifing in, a ribbon of storm slithering across tile, then a slow, steady widening, the way a calm hand pushes through a curtain. I plant my feet on the slick floor and throw my shoulder into it. The knob grinds my ribs. I'm not strong enough. Love is not a gym routine. It's a prayer you shout into wood. "Mara," I start. "Don't look at it," she says, except half her voice is a growl and the other half is a girl at summer camp telling a ghost story too late to stop. I keep my eyes on her. The world to my left is dark and widening and full of a shape that breathes like winter itself. The headlamp beam slices past my shoulder and paints the hallway. Coat hooks, a framed thrift store print of a skier, a drift of snow that's somehow blown in under the front door and crusted along the baseboard like sugar. The beam skates over the thing in the doorway and refuses to stick. My brain files its edges wrong. Fur that eats light, height that changes as it thinks about me. It isn't inside. Yet. It waits, and its patience is the most violent thing in the room. I kick the door shut. It closes 3 inches. The thing outside doesn't press. It steps back like it's being polite about letting me fail. I wedge the knife back into the jam, this time hilt first like a chalk. It buys me a second, and the second is gold. Mara's wrists flex against the belts. The leather is sweat black. Her fingers convulse, knuckles popping like corn. The nails are not nails, claws budding under human crescents. Her ankles jerk once, twice. The canvas belt sings high with strain, threads fraying like blown hair. "Talk," she rasps. Keep the map." "Okay," I say, palms on her cheeks, heat shocking my skin. "You hate cilantro. You pretend to like it for tacos, but you scrape it to one corner like it's a bug. You keep quarters in your glove box for no reason. You think people who pronounce wolf with the L are suspicious. You..." She laughs, a hitching human sound that cracks in the middle and comes out new. "More. You sing the wrong verse on purpose to see if I'll correct you. You always sit with your back to the door. The door flexes, not from pressure, from presences. Something moves in the cabin's main room, padding slowly, sampling the geography. It has all night. It hums a little under-breath chuckle. That might be cabin wood popping in the cold and might not. "Window," Mara whispers, eyes glossy with fever and something feral. "Go." "Not leaving you," I say, and hear how it sounds. Noble, stupid, true. "Then bring me the salt." She nods at the sink cabinet. "Box." I smelled it. The owners left it for ice. I swing the cabinet open and there it is. A cardboard cylinder with a girl in a yellow dress walking in the rain. My hands shake it like a maraca. The salt hisses, a small white dune across tile. Line, she pants. Door threshold, mean it. I don't know how to mean salt, but I've meant other things with my whole life. I kneel and pour a thick line across the gap, making sure it touches both jambs, a white seam the night can't quite laugh at. I say her name while I pour. I say mine. I say the stupid promises we made about growing herbs on a windowsill and buying a dog with mismatched eyes. I put every future I wanted into a line of sodium chloride. The door sighs again. The crack stays a crack. Something heavy pads away down the hall, then back, as if measuring the threshold. It exhales, and the air shivers, little crystals of frost skating across the tile and stopping in a tidy row just shy of the salt. Good, Mara says, and for a second the old commander is in her, camp counselor, teacher, woman who once talked, her little brother down from throwing a chair. You did good. Her smile keeps going. It bears too much. The towel falls from her teeth with a wet flap. Blood threads from the corners of her mouth and freezes in tiny garnet beads on her chin. She shudders. It starts at her feet and rolls through her like the wave at a stadium, but this is a stadium in hell. Her ankle bones shift under the skin, the heel nudging down and back, tendons skidding across new paths. I hear a sound like knuckles being cracked inside a fist. Almost, she whispers, eyes on mine, begging forgiveness for a crime she hasn't finished committing. I can hold the corners if you hold the middle. I've got you, I say, and mean it in ways I never did when the stakes were mortgages and holidays. Something scrapes along the wall outside, claws testing drywall, finding studs. It stops at the kitchen, then the living room, then the back hall. When it gets to the bedroom, it pauses. I can hear it sniff. It huffs, impatient at the thin smell of us that's everywhere and nowhere. Then closer, back to the bathroom, something scoots over the floor. Not the thing. A softer sound. I tilt my headlamp beam down. A folded piece of paper is being slid. Under the door. My scalp tries to crawl backward off my skull. What? I start. Don't, Mara says sharply. Don't read. The paper stops half in, half out, like a tongue daring me. Faint letters show through. Block capitals, tidy, like a note taped to a neighbor's door. Please keep noise down after 10 p.m. My hands twitch. Something on the other side taps twice on the paper with a claw tip. Inquisitive, friendly, a librarian, requesting quiet. Salt. Mara breathes. Another line. There. I pour a second line in a ring around the base of the toilet, then around her feet, then, because I'm greedy for walls, around us both, a sloppy, desperate circle. It looks like a ritual you'd buy at a hardware store. It looks stupid and it looks like the only thing I can do. The smell of salt hits the back of my throat like ocean and childhood. The thing on the other side huffs again. The paper sucks back under the door with the sound of a tongue leaving a frozen pole. Then silence, except for the body plot unfolding in front of me. Mara's shoulders pop. Not loud. Intimate. The kind of sound you'd be embarrassed to make in a yoga class. Her collarbones reseat, her ribs widen, one at a time, a zipper being opened by invisible hands. She pants shallowly and hums under it, an animal sound that isn't hers and is. The belts do their honest work. The pipe under. The sink moans like a tenor trying to find pitch. Look, she whispers and moves her eyes toward the mirror. I angle the headlamp. Her reflection shows all the little wrongs stacking. The ears that have crept a fraction higher and back, the lobes migrating, the shell changing to catch a different music. The nose easing into a long argument with itself. The fine hairs on her jawline standing like a field in a breeze, There are new shadows under her cheekbones, shaped like secrets. "Do you hate me yet?" she asks, light as gossip, blade under velvet. I swallow. "No, you will," she says like the weather. Her jaw clenches and I hear a squeal, the sound of enamel under pressure. One canine glides with obscene ease past the lip of her gum. The mouth suddenly has more room for hurt. The big pad of feet starts again outside, once, twice, then a heavier sound, the front door trying a thoughtful push. The deadbolt labors. The latch holds. The cabin shivers around its old hinges. We need another plan, I say, because plans are small gods. Mara's eyes flick to the ceiling. Attic. There is no panel. She nods toward the hall. I smell dust. Of course she did. After, she says, when I break the belts, you run. Ladder up in the hall closet. You go like I never mattered. You mattered, I say, and the past tense guts me. Her breath stutters, and then finds a new rhythm. Her chest rises and falls on a beat I don't recognize, a wolf's metronome. Her wrists change shape under my palms. I can feel bones sliding like drawers being rearranged. Every old ergonomic human compromise is being voted out in favor of brutal efficacy. Outside, the generator coughs back to life, miracle or mercy, or the storm playing with us. The bathroom light returns in a weak yellow smear. The fan clacks back on. The mirror fog blooms again, hiding what we are from the mirror for a heartbeat. That fog, a shape, presses against the glass from the other side, not behind us, not in the room. In the mirror, a long, narrow snout, too close, too detailed, breath frosting the silver from inside the silver. The eyes are like cored moons. They slide to me and I feel a winter older than language step into my lungs. The snout opens and the glass bows out like a bubble. The salt circle around us hisses. Mara's head snaps toward the mirror and the cords in her neck stand like ropes. She snarls, a sound built in the Jurassic, and everything in the cabin answers it. Rafters, pipes, the storm itself. The mirror steps back. The impression fades like a thing retreating into deep water. I wait for my sanity to return. It sends an out-of-office reply. "Okay," I say. "Attic, salt, run. Got it." "Not yet," she says, and bites down on the towel again. "Hold me once more. I can still hear you if you're touching me." I put my hands on her shoulders. Under my fingers, something new stirs. Bundles of muscle building like storm clouds, strength knitting itself for a body that plans to outrun light. It terrifies me, it makes me proud, and that shame is another cut. The door outside thumps again, not a polite test this time, a reminder. I'm going to... Mara starts, and then it happens. The first true break. Her right wrist fractures from human into purpose with a rolling, decisive shift. The belt snaps like string. She jerks, shocked at herself. The left belt holds, leather screaming like the last word in an argument. Her ankles wrench, canvas tearing in a staccato rip. The pipe under the sink gives a long, mournful squeal, then clanks, then holds. Her eyes find mine one last perfect time. "Run," she breathes. "I'll stall me." The door swings wider on a slow, delighted arc, stopping dead at the salt, line like it hit glass. A paw the size of a skillet eases through the gap at floor level, pads kissing tile, claws tapping once. The salt smokes. The paw retracts, amused. I grab the headlamp from my hat and shove it onto Mara's head instead. "I am coming back," I say, lying like a vow. She smiles with too many teeth. "Go." I rip the knife from the jam and the dome slaps open to the salt. The night leans in and hits its nose on an invisible pane. The shape breathes frost across the threshold, patient, courtly, assured. I step over my stupid saving circle into the hall where the world is waiting to eat my name. Behind me, belts explode. Ahead, the attic panel waits like a trapdoor in an old stage. The storm inhales for the next act. The hallway feels longer than geometry permits. A tunnel the storm keeps reheating and stretching. I move anyway, knife in one hand, other hand skating along drywall until my fingers snag the pull cord to the attic hatch. It's a frayed white, string with a brass ring, dumb as hope. Behind me, the bathroom detonates into sound. Leather snaps, porcelain cracks, the vanity skids an inch and throws up a powder of ancient dust. Mara's voice fractures into two notes trying to occupy the same frequency, a human sob and a beast's first clean breath. The fan dies again, insulted. Attic, I tell myself out loud, because the voice in your head becomes a crowd under pressure. Ladder, up, shut the panel, salt the seam. The hatch resists like an eyelid. I yank. The stairs tumble down and clap the floor with a hollow wooden cough. Dust pours. Mouse droppings ping like sleet. I climb. Halfway up, a shape glides into the hall below, tall enough to notch its shoulder against the ceiling, fur that eats the headlamp's beam like soot. I get only slices. A chest like a boulder under a winter pelt, a jawline too long. Hands that are not hands at all, but clever paws hung with exact knives. It doesn't rush. It considers. A scholar of my fear. I throw a line of salt across the bottom rung, thick as a scar. The thing watches. It lifts one paw and sets the pads, to the dust just shy of the white. Claws extend, tap, tap. The salt snaps and hisses like oil in a pan. It smiles. My body does something before my brain approves it. I kick up the last 3 rungs and pop into the attic, dragging the ladder by its string-handled lip. The hatch slams like a trunk on a body. I dump the whole salt can around the panel seam, sloppy, trembling everywhere. A sharp hiss answers from below, like a fuse reconsidering. Silence now, except for the generator's stubborn hum, and Mara's not silence, that braided sound of agony and arrival bucking in the bathroom. The attic is a lung full of dust. Cold. Locks its hands around my neck and squeezes. A single bare bulb hangs dead center, string looped around it like a noose. The beam from my headlamp, borrowed by Mara, is gone. I've got the knife and the dark and a boxy little flashlight from my pocket that flickers like a dying fish. The place is trussed in rafters and lousy with old crap. A rusted sled, a box of mildewed paperbacks, a blue plastic tote labeled ex-Maz, one cracked window with frost ferns etched on it like cathedral glass. The roof pops and sighs under snow load. Something skitters away from me on tiny feet, sensibly offended. Below, the bathroom door screams wood sound and then explodes outward. I feel the shock of it in the joists. A line of plaster dust drifts up into my face, tasting like chalk and old toothpaste. A new sound comes with it. A 4-beat gate, knifing down the hall, then stopping, then 3 beats, then a low scrape. Learning itself, loving it. Mara, I whisper into the insulation, because I'm an idiot, because love's job is to forget the odds. Nothing answers. Then, too fast, everything answers. The first howl isn't hers. It comes from the cabin's front door. A bass bell note rung by a throat the size of a winter. All the glass in the cabin vibrates. My teeth ping my skull. The howl is a paragraph about hunger, a topic sentence longer than breath. It vibrates my pockets. It drinks the air and laughs. The second howl is hers, higher, rope burn bright. It bites the first note in half and holds the shivering piece like a trophy. She is done borrowing breath. She is making it. Boards thunder, walls talk. 2 speeds collide in a narrow hall. Patient eternity and brand new speed, drunk on its own legs. I hear the crash like gods wrestling in a closet. Then a silence you can cut into quarters and stack. Something hits the attic hatch from below. Not the thing at the door. Not Mara, I pray. The ladder jumps 2 inches in its housing. The salt sizzles where it spills into the gap. I press both, palms to the panel and lean like I'm keeping the moon out. Voice, I think. Give it voice. Story is glue. You don't like cilantro, I say to the hatch like an idiot. You hate it. You... Claws rake the underside of the panel and the brass ring screams on wood. The rake retreats, then taps once, twice, thrice in a neat stair-step pattern. Curious. Counting. Right, I mutter. It can count. From below, a new series of sounds. Mara's nails on wood, the stutter of something sliding, then a slam against drywall that shakes a picture off its nail and sends it skating across a floor I can't see. A low, grinding snarl that curls my toes, then words punched through a mouth that doesn't want to make them. Go. 3 letters. Hers. A tall order, and then the sentence gets eaten by the dark around it, chewed back to breath. I crawl across the attic on my belly to the frost-bloomed window. The glass is thin and walks in its frame when the wind shoves it. Beyond, whiteness and the forest like dull saw teeth and a sky that wants me dead purely on principle. The drift along the eaves has piled to the sill. If I kick this window, the snow will pour in and make a slope down to the back roof. From there, the lean-to over the mudroom. From there, ground. From ground, lake, trees, night, claws. If I go, I leave her. If I stay, I feed something else. Run, she said. I'll stall me. Screw you, I whisper like a prayer. We stall you together. Behind me, the hatch flexes. The salt line holds. Barely. A black tip of claw slips through a hairline crack and etches a slow, tidy circle in the paint. It isn't brute forcing. It's thinking. I rummage the attic junk with frantic, hushed hands. The sled. Too big to fit down with me, but maybe. The Xmas tote. Inside. Tinsel. Brittle glass bulbs. A metal tree stand with 4 inward-facing screws like fangs. A coil of extension cord. The tree stand feels like a trap that forgot it was a trap. I spin the eye screws out till they're razors, jam it in the middle of the hatch, screw down. If the panel lifts, the stand might bite the ladder, might jam, might buy a handful of heartbeats. The tote's bottom coughs up a string of old Christmas bells. I loop them crisscross over the hatch. If something lifts it, there will be music. Dumb, bright, wrong music. A warning. Down in the house, the fight re-erupts. It moves room to room like a weather system. Bodies slam walls. The kitchen table goes over. Chairs chirp their legs across linoleum. Glass breaks in a handful, and the smell of copper soaks through the cracks like a fog of pennies. Under the violence are smaller sounds. Mara's breath, now so deep you could hide in it. The other things rumbling purr. Interactions we have no human words for. Greeting, challenge, claim. Pack. I whisper, and the word tastes like steeped pine needles. Of course, not a lone thing. Nothing this old stays alone. The one at the door and the one in my house and the one pressing the attic hatch aren't strangers. They're variations. They're a family I wasn't invited to, and my invitation is scrawling itself under my skin. The ladder bumps. Bells tinkle, merry and deranged. The hatch lifts a thumb's width, and the tree stand bites. The screws squeal on old wood and dig in. The hatch stops, Newton's laws throwing my weight forward. So hard my teeth click. The salt smokes. The claw taps once in approval, like a teacher grading me. Just leave. I hiss at it, at them, at the old world come to evict us. Take your theology and go. A laugh oozes up through the crack. Not a joke, recognition. As if something on the other side remembers telling a boy in a treehouse. He's brave just before knocking the treehouse down. Okay, I say, okay. To nobody, to myself. I crab walk back to the window, kick it with my boot heel once, twice. On the third try, the glass gives with a brittle shriek and snows inward, little diamonds skittering off into pink insulation. The wind punches my face. Snow pours a white, avalanching. It piles a slope down the roof like a weird invitation. Slide. I stick my head out. The roof pitches toward the mudroom like a cheap carnival ride. Past that, the yard is a layered cake of drifts, then the tree line, velvet black trunks, and among them, oh, two eyes like coins. Watching, no hurry. If I go now, I'm a white rabbit dashing into a pack of hounds who wrote the forest. Behind me, the bells tinkle again. The hatch lifts a little more, the stand screams, then holds. How many more teeth do I have to throw into this mouth? I reach for the sled and drag it to the window. It wedges awkward across the frame. A plan occurs to me that is so stupid it might be smart in a world that's no longer taking tests. Ride the sled to the mudroom roof, jump to the drift, sprint for the lake where open space is a kind of honesty. If the pack loves cover, maybe it hates lakes. Maybe it slips. Maybe I buy 10 seconds. Maybe she gets one more human word. Mara, I call down, louder now, knowing they'll hear, betting everything on them listening. If you can hear me, scratch twice for yes. Silence. The fight pauses as if they're all giving the floor to someone. Then, scratch, scratch, two neat rakes on drywall. I don't know if it's her or something that learned choreography 40 winters ago. My heart sprints into a wall anyway. I'm opening the window, I say, as if they don't absolutely know. I'll draw them out, attic to roof to lake. You find the crawl space, break something, make noise, make them choose. Silence again. Then not scratches words, butchered into utility. Run, left. The L takes effort, as if a mouth built for ripping finds the letter seditious. Pine, red, mark. Left, pine, red mark. I scramble to the window, flashlight searching the left slice of yard. There, 10 yards out, a pine with its bark painted with 2 slashes of red. Trail marker, survey paint, or, my stomach flips, sign a pack uses for doors. Copy. I whisper, which is soldier speak and ridiculous and all I have. Left, pine, red. Something slams the hatch so hard the tree stand screams and slides and leaves a greasy gouge in the wood. The bells lose their minds. The panel lifts an inch and a paw wedges into the gap, pads like black coins, claws sliding, out like letters being written. No more time. I climb onto the window frame with the sled nose pointed to the roof pitch. Cold gnaws my thighs through denim. The wind puts its mouth on my ribs. I take one breath so deep it hurts, and for 1 second, I smell everything. Pine sap, hot fur, iron, old dust, Mara, hay. I shout and bellow a word I have never said with real intention. Come. The cabin inhales. The house and the pack and the storm hold their breath to watch the idiot. Good. Let them. I throw my weight into the sled. It shoots like it was built. For this exactly once. My hips bump the roof seam. My boots skitter for purchase. My fingers white-knuckle the rope that isn't really a rope, but old twine browning with rot. The sled knifes down frost-slick shingles, hits the shallow angle of the mudroom roof, and goes airborne for one heartbeat that tastes like copper and childhood. I land on one hip, skid, smash through a dune of drift and spill off the edge into snow that welcomes me like a bad mattress. I run for the left, for the pine, for the red. The yard is waist-deep forgiveness. I hurdle it knee first, ankle twisting, sweat freezing in my eyebrows. Behind me, the attic gives up a sound like a drawer being yanked out and thrown downstairs. Bells scream a final chorus. The pack acknowledges gravity. Then, over all that, Mara howls. It is her voice wearing a star's throat. It pins me to my own name and says, "Move." I move. I hit the red-marked pine and see what she meant. A narrow notch in the wind-scoured drift behind it, a gap in the fence line where snow collapses to a ditch. Not safety, a route. It angles left, away from the lake, along the property's fence. In the ditch is a shape half buried in white, a low wooden frame like a cattle gate fallen and iced over, a crawl space mouth. I throw myself down and shoulder scrape, into it belly first, arms out, the snow stuffing my hood like a gag. Wood catches my jacket, splinters find skin. Behind me, over me, the yard fills with motion, and the motion has eyes. The first body hits the drift above my legs and pulls. A tray of snow down across my calves. Claws rasp wood inches from my feet, testing. A long, slow inhale tastes my boots, my fear, my marinade of stupid. The body waits. I wiggle deeper, elbows grinding, lungs burning, shoulders scraping. The crawl space eats me like a horizontal throat, and somewhere ahead in the dark, something breathes back. Left, I whisper to myself, because she said it, because I will die holding her map like a rosary. Left. The pack presses the snow overhead with gentle hands. They don't dig. Not yet. They let me choose. So I choose forward, into a place built for the underbelly of a house, where things hide from weather and names and the moon. I choose into the dark, her voice still threads through. I choose the path she bought me with belts and bone, and a vow I don't think she broke. Behind me, a low growl rolls through the drift like thunder tunneled under snow. It is not angry. It is promise. The promise of a hunt that begins when the story gets honest. I get honest. I crawl faster. The crawl space breathes like a creature too tired to hide it. Cold crawls along my ribs in thin, industrious fingers. Joists press low enough to bump my cap. Spiderwebs try to teach me about lineage. The dirt is a felt of old sawdust and mouse. Bones. I belly worm forward, elbows ploughing 2 troughs, knife clenched in one numb hand like a ticket they'll never take. Behind me the snow roof sags, listens, rises. The pack is considerate. Predators who learned long ago that patience is the hottest flame. They pad left when I go left, fall still when I freeze, move when I move, a chorus that can improvise. Left, I tell the dark, because her 3 letters beat like a drum in me. I angle toward the property fence line. The crawl space narrows, then opens into a rectangle framed by mortared stones. The old foundation that got swallowed when some optimist added the mudroom. On the stones, a smear of red paint, twin slashes, the same mark as the pine. A door the earth forgot. Wood swollen. Iron hinges furred with rust, a ring handle as cold as a verdict. It isn't locked. My shoulder hits the wood, my knee braces, I pull. The door gives with a wet sigh and a cough of air that's lived too long under sentences. I slide through. A root cellar. Small, square, the smell of damp potatoes that died a decade ago. Shelves sag under the weight of nothing. A bricked-in arch hints at tunnels this house doesn't remember aloud. On the packed earth floor, a circle of white residue like the ring the wrong glass leaves on a table. Salt that somebody meant once, and on the wall, scratched shallow but clean, a sigil a child could draw, triangle over a circle, 3 short bars at the top like teeth. She knew. I breathe, and I don't mean the realtor. 2 things happen at once. From the house above, a body bigger than argument blows through drywall and rides a table to splinters. Wood rain patters in every direction. A laugh, a real human laugh, cuts through it, high and hot and terrifying because it's threaded with pride. My name rides it. 3 syllables, my mother's music. Do not, I snarl to myself, a command I wish my bones could enforce. The second thing, something small moves in the far corner of the cellar. I whirl the flashlight. Its beam downs a shape in the lint and old burlap, a wooden crate with slats wide enough to breathe through. Inside, 2 eyes, neither animal nor electric, stare back. They blink slow, feline. A tongue flicks a nostril. The head that follows the eyes toward the light is lupine in shape and completely wrong in scale. A pup, too young to gloat, fur the color of snow drifted under a truck, ears oversized and still soft at the edge like felt. It sneezes. I freeze, so violently my shoulder seizes. The pup tilts its skull, curious, not friendly, a laboratory of instincts running parallel for the moment. Its chest flutters quick. It has a collar, a red ribbon woven with something metallic that the flashlight refuses to like. The crate isn't a prison, it's a playpen with rules. I lift the light, and the beam finds scratch marks on the floor around the ring of old salt, tiny half-moons fast as laughter. They run in a circle, then veer off and stop at a blank patch of earth near the wall. I brush the dirt with my glove. Lettering emerges, etched with patient claws. "We wait for you." The torch shakes in my hand. "For me," I whisper, and the cellar absorbs the air I lavish on the stupid. The pack above stops moving for one perfect second, a whole church holding its breath. Then the house shifts its weight, and a new thing arrives. A hush that isn't quiet so much as attendance, like walking into a courtroom already in session. The pup yawns, a pink cave bristling with baby knives. It paws the crate slat and squeaks a sound that hits me in the skull with a memory that isn't mine. Pups tumbling in snow under an old spruce, steam rising off their backs, a large shape watching with a patience so tender it looks like murder, to anything not built for it. From the hallway overhead, claws tap wood in a neat descending pattern. 4, 3, 2, 1, like a teacher counting down. Then a weight stops directly above me. Dust sifts into my hair. I could put my palm to the ceiling and touch the outline of a rib cage, pretending to be a roof. Salt. I croak to myself and drop to my knees. I scrape the old ring with my glove and it powders obediently. Not enough. I upend the shaker remains, mere grains. A cracked, dry hiss. Not enough. The crate pup sneezes again, and this time the sound has an edge, a question. It stands and pushes its nose into the gap between slats. Its collar chimes a tiny bell I'm not sure is metal at all. The sound makes the salt ring fizz, like soda. "Hey," I whisper, helpless as a hand. I hold my fingers palm down, slow. It licks once, hot, rough, a currency exchange I don't know. The bell chimes once more. Outside, the snow roof dents with a step. The cellar door behind me, the one I came through, scratches. Once, twice. Gentle as a mother with manners. "Don't open," I tell my traitor spine. I look up at the joists and imagine Mara in the chaos. Above, the shape I love wearing the shape that would eat me. Her howl is in them all now, a theme they keep returning to. There's a new pattern in the noise, staccato slams, then a twisting scrabble, like she's learning a corner of the boy. House the old ones don't use. The attic ladder collapses with a metallic whimper, then barks its knuckles on tile. "Stall me," she said. "Copy," I say, and taste blood. My lip, my teeth, I don't know. I turn back to the wall sigil. Triangle over circle, 3 short bars like teeth. The bars pull at me. The triangle looks like a tent, or a roof, or a mountain. The circle looks like a moon or a den mouth. Hide under the mountain where the teeth can't reach. Child logic, predator wisdom. Mean it, she told me about salt. Maybe salt is the least of it. I draw the sigil in the old salt on the floor, fat, thick lines, then press my palm to the circle and breathe like I'm fogging the world. At the top of my breath, I whisper her name. The cellar air changes temperature by a few mean degrees, the kind you notice with your marrow. The pup sits, its ears crane. It looks at the sigil and does a thing no dog has ever done in front of me. It bows its head. The bell hums sympathetically. Above us, the weight over the cellar shifts, amused. Claws set, lift, set again. A long breath vents, The ceiling drops dust like confetti. The cellar door scratches again, a little more insistent. Then a voice right. Outside, low, woman, the words almost right, vowels wrapped in fur. Open. Please, baby, it's so cold. It's her voice with all the edges sanded off. It's the tone she used the first time we said I love you at different volumes, and she softened hers to catch mine. Rule 3. Not you, I say, and put my bloody thumb to the circle on the floor. I press until I feel grit embed. I mean it, as hard as a person can mean a drawing in dirt. I choose her, the her under the teeth. The cellar door stops scratching. The house above unpauses like a game console with a fresh quarter. Weight shifts away from the cellar toward the kitchen. Glass answered it. I hear something like a metal mixing bowl go skittering. The back door bangs once in its frame. Something tests the latch like a locksmith. Then, God help me, the sound of a fridge opening. They're eating us like a home invasion with paws. Okay, I snarl, and make a decision that belongs to an idiot, a lover, and an animal backed into its own skull. I undo the latch on the crate. The pup blinks at me. We consider each other across a tiny, stupid chasm called life. I lift the lid 2 inches. It raises its nose to the crack and inhales so deeply the ribbon bell sings 3 notes that feel like a memorial and a warning. Come on, I whisper. Your family's home. I slide the lid aside, slow as a lie. The pup steps out, shoulders too big for its idea of itself, legs slightly uncertain. It wobbles once, plants, then shakes hard, enough to snow its own fur. Rule 1, I hear myself say, because rules keep the floor from turning to water. No biting. It opens its mouth and shows restraint by closing it. We look at the cellar door. We look at the sigil. The pup pads into the salt ring, sits on the circle, and puts its paw on my boot like a stamp. Salt and meaning, I mutter. Fine. I scoop the pup. It is heavier than it looks and exactly as hot. Its heart is a sewing machine. The ribbon hums. I tuck it under my jacket like a furnace that dreams of hunting. It licks my throat once with effortless ownership. The house upstairs reorients like a compass snapped near a magnet. Something stops mid-fridge door, lifts its head, inhales the kind of inhale I will hear in dreams until I die. They know. I whisper to the pup, because we need to be honest at least somewhere. It makes a sound like a sneeze and a snort had a baby. I shoulder the cellar door, not slowly this time. It swings, kisses my spine with splinters. I take the crawl space on elbows and knees with a speed I didn't pack for, dirt scouring my chin, jacket zipper grinding on joists. Behind us, paws begin like a polite applause that will not remain. Polite. Snow avalanches into the opening as I reach the fence ditch mouth. I burst into the night like a fish throwing itself into fire. The yard is a cathedral of white. The wind has thinned as if fascinated. The red-marked pine nods like a judge. The lake beyond is a sheet of iron with snow powdered thin as sugar. The forest past it waits, 1,000 black commas wanting a sentence. Bodies unbury from drifts. Around me, 3, 4 more, all at middle distance. Their eyes hang in the air like ornaments. One steps forward and shows me how language could have gone if the first alphabet was teeth. Stay, I whisper to the pup, because good luck. It wriggles deeper into my coat and vanishes. I feel its heart thrumming against my sternum like a bomb that loves me. The front door of the cabin opens, not a blow, an opening. The one with the locksmith's laugh steps out and shakes itself like a wet dog in front of God. Frost explodes off its coat in a halo. It rises onto back legs, leisurely, and looks over the yard like it owns the deed. It does. Its chest is a drum. Its muzzle is a poem about meat, and next to it, leaning on the doorframe like a woman who has been through it and will go through it again, Mara. Not naked, not human modesty. The change doesn't care. She wears what's left of the clothes like flags caught in a barbed fence. Fur skims the lines it likes and leaves the rest to theatre. Her eyes are a winter sky torn to let constellations through. Her mouth is half built for vows, half built for promises. She sees me. She sees the bulge under my coat where the pup hides. Her lip lifts, warning, wonder, pride, grief, then smooths mercy she won't always have. Left, she mouths, without breath, without sound. The pack reads her shape and pretends they don't. I don't look at the pine again, I move. The ditch skirts the fence line to a gully that runs along the highway like a secret. I jump into it thigh deep, pull the earth toward me in handfuls like it's a rope. Paws hit the snow behind us in syncopation, at first holding pace like an escort, then accelerating. The night tips forward. On the second bend, a form blurs along the ridge above the gully and drops into it 10 yards ahead, silent as a sentence. End. It stands sideways to me, tall as a doorway, shoulder ridges prickling like hackles. It looks back over its furred shoulder and opens its mouth around a quiet I can hear. Something inside me takes a knee. The pup under my jacket rumbles a sound a teacup shouldn't hold. Yeah, I whisper, hysterical. We're very brave. The thing in the gully steps toward us once, twice, not pouncing, herding. It wants me left, not right. Left, like, she said. Left like a map I don't get to draw. I take the left fork and the gully deepens into a culvert that ducks under the private road that loops to the lake. We hit the mouth, black and round, barred with ice teeth. I shoulder in. Inside, concrete, frost, a half-inch of icy trickle that bullies my boots. Darkness that can count. It curves, snakes, shrugs a bend, and lets me believe in straight lines again. Sound behaves differently here. My breath is a metronome. Their paws are a rumor. Halfway through, the pup pushes its head up and licks my chin hard enough to sting. The bell hums. The concrete vibrates faintly with a rumble I can't place. Generator? No, the highway. Civilization 50 yards away, a whole other religion. Almost, I lie. We spill out the other side into a culvert mouth rimed with teeth of ice. The ditch here is deeper and narrower. A fence, old and crushed by winters, runs along it, and beyond that, a cut in the pines where the highway is a white ribbon strung with ghosts. Headlights blink distantly like stars with appointments. I go for the fence. The first wire bites. The second kisses me with winter. I throw my stomach over and roll, jacket snagging, pup wriggling, knife clattering from my hand to vanish in snow. I land in the ditch on the far side with a whoomp that rearranges my organs. The bell sings. The pack arrives at the fence like a storm hitting a cliff. They don't leap it. They stop. Not respect, not fear. Rules, property line, a boundary meaner than salt. Maybe older. The fence is nothing but old wire and rust, but the air has a seam in it here, thin, vertical, knife-like. Law, written by somebody who knew the old laws and had the nerve to draft addenda. The big one, the locksmith, walks along the fence 2 yards to my right. Its eyes follow me with a look I have seen in boardrooms and bar fights. You will do as you like. I will do as I like. We'll see which is older. It leans in and inhales. The pup in my coat huffs back like a kettle. The big one grins. It steps back. It sits, very proper, like a wolf in an illustrated bestiary being polite for the prince. Mara reaches the fence last. She is breathing like a furnace. She looks wrong and perfect, still in that between, jaw almost muzzle, hands almost paws, torso more truth than compromise. She comes close enough that if I reached out, I could brush the space where her knuckles are inventing themselves. She doesn't reach. She inclines her head. Run, she says, almost like a human, and then, to the pack. Something that isn't a word but closes a door soundlessly. I hesitate long enough to say a stupid prayer, which is this: I love you. Her face does a thing no wolf has studied. She smiles like a person being told a story she didn't think she'd get to hear again. Then the smile breaks on a rock under the surface, and the current takes over. Her breath deepens. Her pupils blow black to the rim. She steps back from the fence like a woman who's already solved the next 3 moves and knows at least one of them breaks the board. The gully bends toward the highway. I run. My lungs raise themselves with the air. The pup hammers my ribs, a drummer calling the tempo up, up. At the shoulder of the road, I collapse over the plow berm and flop onto asphalt like a fish that outlawed water. Headlights. A pickup. I fling my arm into the air. The driver stomps the brake and fishtails to a sincere stop 20 feet past me. Reverse lights bloom, then forward white drowns me. The window hums down a third of the way because people have been born for more than 100,000 years, and we still know how stories begin. You okay? A voice calls. Male. Older. Suspicious in a neighborly way. No. I cough, and that seems to satisfy him. He opens the door in that slow, measured way rural men do when they expect trouble and don't wish to waste it. He steps around his door, boots crunching salt. He sees my face, then the coat moving against itself, then the ditch behind me, then the trees. His eyes do math. Old math. Get in, he says. I do. The pup does. He shuts the door. He looks at my coat bulge and does not ask a single question a sane person would. He puts the truck in gear and eases us onto the highway as if a sudden move might insult the weather. In the rear view. At the edge where the fence stops and the woods begin, the pack stands like a painting you find in an attic that shouldn't be legal to own. The locksmith watches the taillights until they curve out of sight. Mara doesn't look away until even the curve is gone. The driver clears his throat once. I know a place, he says like a euphemism. You're bleeding. Only in the popular places, I say, and it passes for wit in a world that just reversed all my wardrobes. He nods. We don't speak for a mile. The pup tucks its nose into the hollow of my throat and sleeps like a loaded weapon. Not threatening, just true. At the county line, the driver says, without looking at me, you keep that bell quiet when we get there. The ribbon hums against my sternum, the sound pitched like a choice, and I mean it. We'll try. The truck's cab smells like wet wool and tobacco ghosts. Heat blasts from vents that don't believe in subtlety, and the windshield pebbles with salt spit as the wipers muscle their way across a night that doesn't want lanes. The driver doesn't look at me again for 2 miles. He stares at the dark the way men stare at a river they've crossed too many times. Name's Hart, he says finally, like a warning label. He's older than the voice made him, late 50s maybe. Cheekbones carved out of years that didn't ask permission. Beard salted, eyes the color of a pond before it freezes. He wears a cap from a feed store and a coat that remembers livestock. A 3006 rides racked across the back window, legal, clean, unadorned. Hart, I say, because if I don't say something I'll spring a leak. Like the deer, like the heart that quits, he says, and doesn't smile. The pup stirs under my coat. It presses its skull into the hollow above my collarbone and chuffs. A breath that fogs the glass. Hart's eyes flick to it once. His knuckles flex on the wheel, a tiny prayer to Bones. Keep that bell quiet, he repeats. Where we're going, it'll wake neighbors we don't feed. Neighbors? I ask, idiot-mouthed. He doesn't answer. He downshifts for a bend and the truck's rear hip drifts a persuasion across the asphalt. We pass a county sign half-eaten by rust. Past it, a road cut that looks like a jaw. The moon is a pale wound behind the storm, showing like a bad conscience. You from here? He asks. No. Then you don't know what you don't know. He glances at my face, catalogs it like a medic deciding what's already lost. You picked the wrong hill for a love story. I didn't pick, I say. It picked us. He grunts something that could be pity or weather. Happens. Old roots open, new blood runs in 'em. Rivers don't care about names. We turn off the highway at a county plow, cut that a sane person would call a guess. Trees lean close enough to compare notes about our grades. After a quarter-mile, a shape shouldering snow appears. A building hunched into the hill like it's ashamed of its height. A church, but not the kind that hands out casseroles. One room, fieldstone walls, steep roof shouldering drifts, a bell coat without a bell. The windows are narrow and grudging, iron bars spider them like scars. A cross squats on the peak, black ice glossing it into a knife. Hart eases the truck around back, into the lee of a stone buttress. He kills the lights. The dog slaps back. "Out," he says. I obey. The cold hits like new legislation. The pup presses tighter under my coat. Hart doesn't hurry. He shoulders a canvas satchel and a length of chain that isn't hardware store. Bright. It's old iron, pitted honest. He taps the church's side door with 2 knuckles. Doesn't knock. Announces. Then he fishes keys from some pocket older than my car and selects one by feel. The lock turns with a sigh, like something that didn't want to be woken but knows who's allowed. We slip inside and the door claps the night out like a book closing. The church's interior is colder than outside and warmer than bone. Stone breathes a slow, patient damp. Candles gutter in a tin tray by the door, spent, not dead. Hart grinds one wick between thumb and forefinger, murmurs something that isn't Latin, but has Latin's posture, and lights a fresh stub from a match that smells like sulfur and bad teeth. He moves through the nave without ceremony, boots respectful, on old boards, and sets the candle at the altar rail like a man setting down a tool. "Used to be St. Jude's," he says. "Now it's for whoever needs it." "Saint of lost causes," I say, because middle school's stuck somewhere. He shrugs. All Saints work overtime this side of the ridge. The pews are narrow. The hymnal racks hold pamphlets that aren't hymnals. The altar is a plank of oak with grooves worn into its edges where hands worried it down to keep from worrying themselves. Behind it, the apse wall is painted with a crude mural. Hills, a river, a moon, a pack like brushstrokes on a ridge. Over the moon, a red smear of pigment in 2 diagonal slashes. Trail mark. Territory. Warning. Welcome. All 3. Hart keeps moving. He leads me into a side room with a low ceiling and a table scarred by knives. Hooks hang from a rafter, each with something that could be charm or trap, a bundle of yarrow, a twist of hair, a ring of rusty keys on a leather thong, a tin of salt, a horseshoe black with age. There's a cast-iron stove in the corner, squatting like an animal with a belly full of coals. Beside it, a milk crate of split oak. On the table, a ledger with names. Some are crossed out, some are circled, some are written twice. Hart nods at a chair. "Sit," he says, then tilts his head at my coat bulge. "Put it on the table." "No," I say, reflex. The word has a nice roundness to it. It warms my teeth. "It won't go far," he says. "Not with that ribbon, not with me in the room." "What is the ribbon?" "Telling," he says, and the word lands like a label. He sets the chain on the table. It hums the way iron hums when it remembers being forged. They use it when they mix blood. Keeps the new tongue from talking to the wrong mouths. "Blood," I echo, small as a math student. "You're cradling a treaty," he says. He doesn't soften anything. "A claim and a promise with fur. They don't leave that under a house unless they want it found. By me." He looks at my face until I can't stand my face. "By whoever means what they say with salt." I unzip the coat enough to let the pup's head out. It blinks at the candle like it owns it and yawns, bell humming a polite dissonance. Hart's eyes crease. The part of his mouth that gives inch does. "Pretty little debt," he says. He fishes a chunk of jerky from his satchel. sniffs it like a man with rules, and offers it on his palm. The pup sniffs, then takes it with absurd delicacy and mashes it into the table like a child working clay. Hart watches its jaw, approves the caution in its bite. He taps the ribbon with 2 fingers. The bell sings quietly. See, it's telling. Says, ours, not yours, not yet. I stroke the pup's skull like a man petting a grenade. Ours? He doesn't answer that. He points at my chest. Take your coat off, you're sweating in winter, that's a fool's boil. I don't want it to get cold, I say, because my brain has been converted into a nursery by terror. It won't. It's a furnace with eyes. He gestures to a peg by the stove. Hang the coat. Sit. Drink. There's a kettle. There's water. There's a cup that looks clean enough for a war. He pours tea that tastes like pine and regret. I drink. My hands shake so much I have to put the cup down to avoid baptizing the table. Hart watches without watching, hands busy with small, precise rituals, refilling the salt tin, setting the chain so it overlaps itself like a brace, glancing at the ledger as if a name might crawl off it and need catching. You still got your mother's voice on your tongue? He asks lightly, but it isn't a light question. She used it, I say, and my mouth goes desert dry. At the cellar door. He nods once. They'll try all the keys. Soft first, hard after. What's hard? I ask, though I can write that question myself now. He looks at the pup, then at me. Blood, he says simply. And breath. They can cross fences. Not ones the county holds. Paper's an old magic. Survey lines are a gospel if the right hand signs. But paper won't hold a door forever. Men forget what they meant when they wrote it. Wolves don't. He glances at the cross over the side room doorway. It's crooked. It has always been crooked. These help when you mean 'em. Iron helps when you earn it. Salt helps if you draw your line straight. But it's all borrowed time after a while. He raises the chain. My chair scrapes back a human inch. No, I say. He snorts, not for the pup. He nods at the door. For you. What? He rattles the chain across his own wrists lightly. A demonstration. Old rule, what's chained can't change what it didn't ask for. Iron listens. Same as salt. He points to the ledger. Same as names. We anchor you if it gets inside far enough to want your mouth. You want that, or you want to be a doorway with teeth? I start, then stop because I've said that too many times. Mara's still. She's in there. Of course she is, he says. So's a winter older than roofs. The question is, which one wants what? He sets the chain down, palms up. Choice glitters on the table like ice. I look at the pup like it might speak English if I get enough sleep. It blinks at me and then at the iron, curious as a cloud. I look at my hands. They're scored with tiny crescents, her nails, the belts, my sins. I put my wrists together. Hart loops the iron lightly, twice, thrice, and sets the lock so it's closed and not cruel. The chain lies like polite snakes. It doesn't bite, but I feel the oldness of it, mined out of a hill that remembers hooves, smelted in a fire. That dried meat on the side, hammered by a man who wiped his nose with the back of his hand and didn't look at the moon on purpose. It feels like a boundary you don't get to redraw. Hart pours another inch of tea and nudges it toward my mouth. With 2 fingers, he sets his other hand palm down on the table, a casual show of his empty. You'll want to run when you hear her, he says. That's the part of you that makes you worth the trouble. You won't. How do you know? I start to say, and then the bell in the tower that doesn't have a bell rings once. It's not metal. It's throat. It's outside. It reverbs the church stone and my marrow as if the building is a tuning fork and I am a note. Hart breathes in once, out slow. The way you do when a deer steps into the scope and you decide if you're a person who shoots it. Neighbors, he says softly. Time to mean what we meant. He moves like men move when they've practiced. Unhurried enough not to spill seconds, quick enough not to waste them. He pulls a heavy oak bar from brackets and lays it across the nave doors, oak that has stopped axes before. He sprinkles salt along the threshold in a line with no poetry, only accuracy. He nails 2 horseshoes inverted over the lintel, and then, this is the part that breaks the back off the night a little. He takes a stub of chalk from his pocket and draws the triangle over circle with 3 short bars on each door panel. He doesn't look at me while he does it. He looks at the wood like it owes him money. Where'd you learn that? I ask. He tips his chin at the mural. My mother's hands. My grandfather's hands. The woman who lit this stove the winter before I was born and never once complained that iron doesn't kiss back. I try the chain. It's snug, not cruel. I could pull free if I let the chain take skin. The choice is part of the rule. The pup licks one link and huffs disapproval. Hart raises an eyebrow at it like 2 veterans exchanging respect. The second throat bell sounds. Closer. The storm outside goes thoughtful. The church makes a sound wood makes when it remembers trees. A third bell, and then, in the pause where a fourth should be, Mara's call. Not a howl. A call, low, intimate. The sound she used to make my name into a safe house. Every tendon in my body tries to stand. The chain holds my wrists down to the table like a sheriff with a palm on your chest. The pup whines a note that could break a window if it asked twice. Hart watches me, all the pity in him locked behind his teeth. You hear her, he says, not a question, a diagnosis. Yes, I say, and the word is a brick warm from the oven. She's asking nicely, he says. They always start there. She'll ask mean in a minute, don't answer either language. How? I ask. I'm not being clever. I want the math. You covered yourself in rules when you picked her up and called her by her name in front of that cellar, he says. That's how. He gestures at the chain. And this is the part that helps when you get religious about it. The nave doors breathe in. The bar shivers in its cradle. Snow dust sifts from the lintel onto the salt line and refuses to cross it. A shadow moves behind the glass like a weather front. A paw touches the pane, pads delicate, claws sheathed. The glass bows in a way glass shouldn't. A long nose fogs an oval that blossoms and fades. Don't look, Hart says, eyes on me, not unkind. Make your eyes mean something else. I look at the table, my wrists in their iron bracelets, the ledger with the names, Dora K., Sam L., Calder, circled then crossed. Ruth, twice, once neat and once as if written, shaking. I look at the pup. It stares at the door and doesn't blink. A voice snakes through the crack under the door, soft as breath. Baby, it says, a word from a summer porch we haven't built yet. It's warm out here. Come see. Hart doesn't move. Ask it a question, he says. What? I hiss. If she can answer it, maybe she's she. He tips his head. Ask something you never told anybody else. That's the kind of impossible you can pick up if you use both hands. My mind throws up flashes like a slideshow. Panic never curates. I land on a small thing beloved by bigger things. What did you call the scar on your knee? I ask the door. The white one shaped like a comma, silence that isn't. The storm holds a breath. The church listens. The pack listens. The pup's bell hums a tiny interrogative. Then, comma, the voice says, triumphant. Baby, I told you that in August under the bridge. No, I whisper because the word is razor. You said ghostfish, and you laughed when I made it worse with comma. The voice pauses. It makes a little hurt sound that is very human and very wrong. Hart's eyes half close the way men close their eyes when they mustn't. He nods. Good. Don't feed it with fixable lies. The nave window nearest the door hisses. Frost feathers turn black where a shadow passes. A claw, only a fraction of it, drags a line in the glass slow as a marriage going bad. Then a different voice, old. Patient, tired of the prologue. Open, we are owed. Hart lifts his chin like a man greeting a familiar taxman. You're owed what you can take without breaking the rules, he says conversational. Same as always. Always changes, the voice says, and its breath smells like old pine sap from a sawmill none of us admit to owning. Hart smiles. Without joy. Not here. Something heavy leans into the door, not a charge, a dissertation. The oak bar hums. The salt turns into little clumps where breath beads it. The chalk sigils sweat. Hart slides closer, sets his palm to the wood, and hums through his nose a note that makes the nails in the hinges remember where they were born. You can't hold until morning, the voice says, patient, factual. You never do. We have time, you have blood. Always did the math, Hart says. Always forget the remainder. A weight shifts along the side of the church where the sacristy wall shoulders snow. The window there is smaller, the bars are thicker. Still, a shadow pours across it like night checking for leaks. A long tongue touches iron and makes it hiss. The pup under my coat barks once, the tiny, furious bark of a teapot that has discovered war. The barbed laugh that answers it is not kind. They know it's here, I say. Of course, Hart says. You whistled with your heart the second you put it under your bones. What do they want with? I stroke the pup's skull and the word dies like a moth in heat. With this one? What all families want with things that make more of them, Hart says. He doesn't say it unkindly. He says it like weather. And what do you want with it? I look at the pup. Its Silver Lake eyes print me on their film. Its breath is hot. Its head is heavy and light and absolutely here. I think about the cellar writing, we wait for you, and realize maybe it wasn't a threat or a promise. Maybe it was both because those are one word in old grammar. I want it to live, I say. Hart nods once like a judge. So do they. So does it. The disagreement is about the how. The nave doors inhale again. The oak bar moans neither poetry nor weakness. Just a long life talking. Hart's hands move to the chain on the table. He doesn't grab it. He touches it like a rosary. He looks at me like a man measuring out truth in doses. We can hold, he says, if we're stingy with seconds, if we don't get sentimental. I am sentimental, I say. I noticed, he says, and nearly smiles. Something delicate raps on the sacristy window. 3 precise taps, like bone on glass. A woman's voice, Mara's, but tuned different, whispers through the stone like water, through linen. They'll let you run if you give us what you picked up by mistake, she says. You could be warm and forgetful by morning. Hart looks at me with half an eyebrow. Counter-offer? Tell them they can have me, I hear myself say, sick and honest. If she walks away. Hart's eyes narrow, the way eyes do when they are deciding if a man is being brave or stupid. Oldest bargain, he says. Costs what you think it costs. He cocks his head at the door. Call it out loud. Let them hear the shape of your spine. I swallow. I feel the pup's heartbeat against me like an argument. I feel the iron, the salt, the chalk. I feel my mouth borrow my mother's voice, without asking. Take me, I say to the door, to the snow, to the mural that never stops watching. Spare her. Silence, the kind that lives under lakes, then laughter. Not many. One. It's old and it's tired of being disappointed by men, but it's never bored. No, the voice says, we want what you made when you didn't know. You were making. The pup lifts its head and looks at the door with a curiosity that isn't human and isn't animal, and is exactly both. Hart leans his hip into the table, one hand on iron, one hand on nothing, and makes his decision. "We don't hold," he says, "and wait, we move." "To where?" I ask, because when a house is surrounded, you stop pretending you own a floor plan. "Bell tower," he says. "No bell, but the rope's still a rope. They hate rope when it tells everyone where they are." He lifts the chain's end and laces it through a D-ring bolted to the table leg. "It will hold me for a sprint and stop me for a bad idea." He tosses the key onto the ledger. It lands on Ruth's name like punctuation. He shoulders his satchel, takes down 2 more horseshoes, drops them in with the salt tin, and rolls a strip of burlap into a torch that won't quite be a torch until it is. He hands me the extension of the chain like a man handing a leash to someone who hates leashes. "You keep that pup's head covered," he says. "If that bell sings while we climb, we're going to meet neighbors I don't write down. Thought we were all ready. Those are the ones with rules," he says. "The others don't vote." The nave doors inhale a 3rd time like lungs about to teach. Hart moves. I move with him. The pup tucks its nose into my throat so deep, it might be trying to drink something from my blood. We skirt the aisle as the oak bar bows and the chalk sigils sweat into streaks. Hart tosses a fistful of salt like feed across the threshold, and the air crackles. The doors exhale disappointment. The sacristy window sighs. The bell stair is narrow and mean. Stone steps spiral up with a tightness that breeds prayer. The chain whispers along behind me like a suspicious friend. Halfway up, Hart pauses and sets a horseshoe under the lowest rung of the bell rope that hangs like a dead snake. He ties a loop of burlap around the rope, ties the loop to the horseshoe with a knot so ugly it must be old, and sets the other shoe on the step above it. He nods at his work like 2 old men approving a fence line. "Trip lines," he says. "If anything not in this conversation tries to climb under us, it'll swear and ring like a mule." "What about above?" He grunts. "Roof's iron-shod, and if they're in the rafters already, we don't deserve the noise." We climb. The pup's bell makes no sound, a gift I do not deserve. At the top, the tower opens into a square of cold fit for a king who hates joy. The bell's cradle is empty. A crossbeam spans the aperture like a giant's clavicle. Snow slants in, fine as flour. The night outside is a chorus. The ridge is a darker darkness. The lake a pale shape like a lie. Hart scrapes salt into a circle with the side of his boot. No artistry, all practice. He sets the burlap torch upright in a bracket and doesn't light it. He looks at me like the tank in me is low and he can't refill it, but he can keep me from knocking it over. "Listen," he says, "just a second. Don't talk. Listen. Listen, I hear the storm. The church's stone cooling, the pack breathing in a ring. And under that something else, a bone-deep cadence, slow, steady, ancient. Footfalls, 1, 2, pause, 1, 2, pause, a thing walking the nave below us, uninvited and unimpressed by salt. The kind that doesn't vote. Hart hears it too. He doesn't swear like a normal man. He inhales, and the inhale has God in it and smoke and grief. They called it, he says, or it smelled us. Doesn't matter. He presses the iron into my wrists a fraction more, fixing me to the here. When it gets to the foot of the stairs, you will want to scream, and if you scream, you will never stop. You will breathe through your nose, and you will hold that pup like it's a version of you that survives. What is it? I whisper. The thing that comes when rules get bored, he says. Stand where you mean to stand. The thing downstairs puts its foot on the first step. The rope murmurs. The horseshoe hums. The pup lifts its head and makes a sound I don't have instruments for. Hart lights the torch with 2 matches. The flame takes its time, then decides to live. The thing climbs. Halfway up, it stops. The burlap loop around the rope creaks. The horseshoe under it rattles. Then, a voice from the bottom, Mara's voice, raw, strained, ringed with pain. "Don't," she says. "But it isn't to me, it's to the thing. He's mine." It pauses. You can feel a pause like that in your teeth. Then it goes back down one step. It breathes out a long, wet sigh that curdles heat. It pads away, patient. The pack below shifts weight. The nave doors inhale again like ocean. Hart closes his eyes. He looks older by years he didn't have time to earn. He opens his mouth and a small laugh comes out, grateful and angry. "She held it," he says. "If you want to die for people, pick that one." The torch spits and settles. Snow pelts the aperture as if the storm just remembered we're in the wrong religion. Dawn is nowhere yet, but there's a promiscuous light to the sky, a thinning, a possibility like an apology. Hart looks at me and then past me, through stone, through night, to some alignment he felt once in his 20s and never stopped trying to stand where it happened. "We can't keep the door forever," he says, "but we can keep the bell. When it's time we ring." He taps the rope with a knuckle, and we run to the lake's edge, open ground. You choose the map she gave you. Left of the point, under the slashed pine. If you make it to the big red float at the ice's lip, the county owns everything beyond. Paper lines. There's hate paper. You step over that float and you make a line with your feet. You mean it. "What about you?" I ask, because I've met 5 men in my life who would run with me into a dawn that cuts teeth, and 3 of them were lying. Hart shrugs once, a mountain modesty. "I'll be busy promising the church I didn't waste it, but I'll be there when it counts." "When does it count?" He tilts his head. The pack below inhales. The thing that doesn't vote sighs a floor lower. The pup's bell hums, the tiniest thread of hungry. The sky over the ridge lifts half a shade like a hand. "Now," he says. He grabs the rope and yanks. The bell that isn't there rings like 100 years of secrets told at once. The sound jumps the rafters, the ridge, my bones. The pack erupts, howls answering like a choir trained by old mouths. The thing that doesn't vote hisses like a wet log on coals and steps wrong. We run, down the stair, through the side room, past the ledger that may as well write me twice now. Hart yanks the oak bar. The nave doors blow open like lungs relieved. Winter slams in, joyful and criminal. The pack skids at the threshold, the salt smoking, the chalk bleeding, the rules arguing with thirst. Mara stands in the center like a verdict. She's more wolf than woman now, but her eyes hold a human grammar. Subject, verb, you. She sees the chain on my wrists. She sees the pup. She sees the door and the light outside it and the line the county drew across the lake. She makes a sound that isn't a plea, isn't a threat. It's a hand in my back where words can't reach. "Go," she says, and all the languages inside the word hurt. We go. Hart flings a horseshoe in a flat arc and hits a thing I don't want to name in the throat with iron. It yelps the way a courthouse would yelp. I shoulder the door jamb, and the door gives me its blessing in splinters. The snow kisses me hard. The pup presses its face into my neck and hums a note that says, "This is a game with teeth. We sprint for the lake." The pack spreads like ink in water and then funnels, channeling us along an aisle between laws. They let me feel fast. They let me feel strong. They let me feel the way a rabbit feels when it is honored with a chase. Hart's boots are a metronome, made of war. He stays half a step behind and left, his breath an old fog that knows what all the hills know. His hand touches my shoulder once when I slip. It's a paragraph about keep moving in glove form. The red-marked pine nods as we pass like an usher, and then the lake opens its white plain, huge as a blank page, thin as the skin over a lie. The big red float bobs at the edge where the ice grows indecisive. Beyond it, the plowed county road, to the dam, salty, ugly, legal. I throw my weight into the last 10 yards like a batter sliding, like a pen carving a signature. The pup's bell starts to sing, barely, a whisper of metal through ribbon, and the sound it makes is two things, a lullaby and a warrant. I cross the float. My boot skids on iron and finds purchase on paper. The chain on my wrists bites. Hart's hand clamps my elbow and steadies me with a small grunt that sounds like 30 years of grief spilling out and refusing to puddle. The pack stops at the float like it's an altar rail. Not all at once. One by one. Respectful. The locksmith sits. It curls its tail. It opens its mouth in a polite, theatrical yawn to show me everything that won't happen if I keep my feet where I put them. Mara stands a yard from the line and shakes once, hard, sending frost off her coat like a blessing or a curse. Her eyes never leave mine. Dawn is a rumor in the east. The rumor starts to believe itself. The first clean ray pulls a thread across the lake like a suture. The pack lifts their heads to it, not in worship, recognition. The night hands the stage to something smaller and meaner. Day. Mara steps to the float until her claws kiss iron. The pup pushes its skull out of my coat and sights down the muzzle of a world. It makes a small sound. Question, promise, hello. The bell hums one clean note. She answers, not a howl, not a word. Something so exactly between it feels like the middle of a coin. A mother, a hunter, a door. It says everything I can't write down without turning into a map. Hart doesn't touch me this time. He lets the chain hold me to the here and now and daylight, and in that here and now the first sun, thin as a knife, slips over the ridge and puts a sharp line through all our names. The first light doesn't feel like mercy. It feels like a verdict we can read but not appeal. The ridge coughs up a thin blade of sun and drags it across the lake like a slow cut. The pack's coats go from iron to smoke to a suggestion of color, rust, ash, coal, winter wheat. Breath hangs in brief ribbons that snap as the air changes its mind about death. Hart stands a half step behind me, chain slack in one hand, the other resting on his thigh like a man keeping a promise where his body won't forget it. The pup's skull is under my chin, heavy as the answer to a question I didn't know I'd asked. The ribbon's bell is silent, waiting to agree with whatever we decide to be. Mara holds. She is so close the line could kiss her claws and call it a treaty. The dawn puts a bright seam along the ridge of her jaw where it's almost muzzle, and the old shape clings like frost on shadow. If I lifted a hand, I could trace the place where my love ends and the thing older than the hills continues. I don't. Hands have consequences. Behind her, the locksmith tilts its head to catch the light with an old scar over one eye. It looks at the float like it's a lawyer, respectful, resentful, busy. The rest of the pack arranges itself in that careless care that's really a tactic. A crescent that isn't quite a circle, an aisle that isn't quite mercy. Paper holds. Hart murmurs, as if reciting from a catechism. Sun helps. But don't think the day is your friend. Day is just another kind of law. My mouth wants to spend itself on her name. Names are salt. Names are doors. I swallow both truths like cheap whiskey. Mara closes her eyes. Not a blink. A choice, and inhales so deep the ribbon under my chin buzzes like a bee trapped in a jar. When she opens them, the human grammar I recognize is there again, unsteady but present. She looks at the pup, then at me, then past me at the county road, and the thin suggestion of a world that pretends it doesn't have rules like these. Go, she says, voice like knuckles in snowmelt. The word wears a shape that could be love. Or strategy. With her, it has always been both. Hart clears his throat and without taking his eyes off the pack says, "You hear the sheriff's tires 10 minutes from now. You keep your mouth broken and your story small. Fell through ice. Lost. The trail. Found a stray. You bring that bell anywhere near a vet and all the dogs in town will testify. What about here? I ask. Though here is a place that just taught me the alphabet I grew up with is a joke. He jerks his chin at the ridge. They'll do what they do. They always do. Your job is not to turn around when the sound asks you to. Mara takes a step. That isn't a step. The kind where muscle changes its mind and the body forgives it. Her shoulders roll. The shape that would love to run puts one foot on a leash and sets it down. She is choosing, and the choosing hurts enough to make the dawn a chorus. Take him, she says, and the word him is a point she can write with her teeth or her hands. She means the pup. She means a debt. She means a promise we will all spend the rest of our lives paying down, with interest. Take him where? I ask, as if geography matters to a language that eats maps. Heart answers for her. Not church, not cabin, not town, somewhere that remembers fences, somewhere you can draw lines and mean them. He taps the chain with a fingernail, a tiny bell of iron. You keep iron by the door, and you buy salt like you've got a leak. Will they come? I ask. The locksmith smiles with its whole mouth, which is not an answer and exactly is. Mara doesn't smile. She does something worse. She looks like the woman who learned which of my lies were protection and which were laziness, and forgave the first category with interest. She glances at the ridge where the sun is deciding to be day. The muscles in her jaw tremble with small wars that end in stalemates. Then she makes the sound I have always known as her thinking noise, low, barely audible, a hum that used to travel our kitchen like a moth. Left, she says again, almost a joke now, almost a liturgy. Her eyes cut to the shoreline, a saw-toothed fringe where ice pretends to be certainty. Under the slashed pines, when you hear, she swallows. The swallow clicks on a tooth, too honest. When you hear me, you don't answer, even if I'm, saying your favorite wrong verse. God help me, I grin. You always skip the bridge. You always cry on the bridge. She shoots back, and for a second we are embarrassingly human at the edge of a cathedral with fangs. The locksmith huffs. The pack shifts. The day grows its first real muscle. The cold loses a degree of its argument. Somewhere far off, a truck downshifts on blacktop and sends that secular sound out like a benediction from a different religion. Hart touches my elbow once, light as a thought he'll deny having. We break clean, he says. We don't give them the comedy of a speech. You walk. I follow till the road grows a badge. You don't look back. If you hear something behind you, you don't write it down with your head. I nod. The chain lies loose around my wrists, more sentence than shackle now. The pup presses its muzzle into the hollow of my throat as if it can read my pulse like a map. The ribbon's bell is still, but I hear it anyway, the idea of a note, the shape of a debt. I step backward over the float, heel to iron to county paper and keep stepping. The pup's weight recalibrates my balance. I learn to be a boat with a furnace in the bow. Heart moves with me, boots setting a tempo that says older than your fear, older than their patience. The pack watches like a jury that has already decided but enjoys the performance of deliberation. Mara stands until my shadow breaks across her paws and the sun stitches it back into the lake. Don't, she says, and I hear all the things she isn't letting the word carry. Don't turn. Don't apologize. Don't ask me to be anything but what I am. Don't forget the part of me that used to burn pancakes on purpose because char is flavor. The word could hold a house and a winter and a life. It holds me. We reach the road. Salt gravel grinds under my boots, mean and municipal. Hart puts 2 fingers to his mouth and sends a whistle down the lane that makes the trees argue about birds. Far off, the truck we left at the church answers in a way a machine answers a man it knows, a chirp, a cough, an agreement to be where we ask. Get him under the back seat if anybody stops us, Hart says. Throw a jacket over him and cough like you've got the plague. I can do that. My voice comes from a body that is 3 inches to the left of mine. The pup's breath warms the place in my sweater where it will later smell like a life. The ribbon buzzes once like a warning or a note I will someday learn to sing back. We walk. The pack trails the edge of the float like the dark side of a penny, never crossing, never quite leaving. The locksmith follows our parallel like a surveyor. Mara follows the locksmith like a woman walking beside a river she intends to cross, after the next bend, or the next. I do not let my head turn. I use the world ahead like a story that starts where the last one ended, a chapter early. At the bend that hides the lake, the wind shifts. It noses up under my collar and gets in my teeth. It brings a smell that will always mean home and threat, wet fur, iron, pine pitched from a wound. It also brings a sound that breaks things politely. Mara's voice, human enough to hurt, animal, enough to hold, threading the last of the night like a silk saw. Remember, she says, not a shout, a thread. I almost answer. Heart squeezes my arm until bones reintroduce themselves. I keep walking. The pup whines a note that isn't disobedience. It's acknowledgement. We climb the last little rise to the county pull-off where Hart's truck sits with its hood steaming like a preacher. He opens the rear door, slaps the vinyl bench with a farmer's affection, and looks at me like a man measuring a cut. Once we pass the ranger station, he says, you tell him, you saw wolves and he'll explain to you they don't live here. You nod. He'll mention cougars. You nod more. He'll ask if you fed a stray. You say no. I fed a stray, I say. Then you learned, he says. Get in. I duck. Tuck the pup under the seat, drape a greasy horse blanket over its laughably noble head. It breathes like a secret I'll never finish telling. Hart closes me in with a clunk that sounds like a door that understands a job. He rounds the hood, climbs in, sets his hands at 10 and 2 like he's been in an argument with a wheel since the year before law was printed, and pulls us onto the road. Where do I take him? I ask. Because the future likes to bully the present. Home, he says. Then somewhere that knows you meant that word when you said it. Will they come? They always do. He flicks his eyes to the mirror, then back to the road. But you've got paper, and iron, and salt, and a bell that hasn't chosen sides yet. That's a better start than most. The trees thin. The lake's edge vanishes behind a ridge, and with it, the sight line that held me together like stitches. There is a pressure change inside my chest, a cabin door opened on a plane, an altitude correction for a heart. I take a breath that doesn't fix anything, and feel grateful for it anyway. We pass the ranger station. A man in a hat stands in the doorway with a clipboard and a coffee. He raises the clipboard the way men raise defenses they can set down for lunch. Hart taps the horn once in a language that says we are busy being alive. The ranger nods like he has become an accomplice by accident and on purpose. 2 miles past the plow turnoff, Hart pulls over in a turnout where the pines make a privacy screen for travelers who need to feel like secrets. He puts the truck in park, keeps his hands on the wheel a second longer than necessary, and looks at me as if measuring the part of me that won't fit back in its old coat. You'll hear her, he says. Some nights like a song. Some nights like a phone call. You'll go to the door. You'll touch the chain. You'll remember this morning. You'll remember to mean your lines. You ever? I start. He smiles like a man showing a scar politely. We all ever. That's how we got here. He nods at the back seat. That one's going to ask questions when its teeth come in. You answer what you can. For the parts that want to run, you lay out a backyard with rules. For the parts that can't help a howl, you tell the neighbors you bought a beagle. He considers. A big one. What about you? I ask, because debts are maps too. What do you need from me? He shrugs like a ridge. Bring salt when you come by. Don't lie to me about what you fed. He holds out his hand. I put mine in it. Iron prints my wrist. His palm is a textbook. And if the day comes when the paper tears and the bell decides it's a flag, you... Come help hold the door. I nod. There are words bigger than mouths. We use heads for them. He puts us back in gear. Town appears in the distance like an apology. Gas station, diner, the promise of a bathroom with a key on a hubcap. Civilization playing dress-up. The sun hauls itself up another inch and reveals the night's fingerprints on everything. Tracks. Scratches. The place where snow sagged and then forgot to stand back up. Life resuming like a joke told too soon. Under the blanket, the pup yawns and noses my palm. The bell hums the bare edge of a note. I feel the sound more than hear it. It isn't threat, it isn't peace, it's attention. At the town limit sign, I make a mistake I will make again. I look in the mirror. The ridge is a story I can't see the end of. The lake is a scar under a bandage. And there, on the last rise where the county paper meets the pack's old grammar, a shape stands. Tall, wrong, perfect. She doesn't wave, she doesn't rear, she doesn't accuse. She is present the way mountains are present, reminder, witness, weather. The truck takes a curve. She disappears. Hart lets the silence sit a full half-minute like a stake resting. Then, because some people are licensed to move you without breaking you, he says, "You did not lose her last night. You changed the math." "What's the answer?" I ask, hating myself for the classroom in my voice. He snorts, "There ain't one. There's only more math." We roll past the diner. Open sign, fizzing in a window, a waitress wiping a counter with the same care you could dress a wound. Hart pulls into a gravel drive behind a house that looks like it grew out of its porch. He kills the engine. "You take the back roads home," he says. "If anybody asks where you found a dog, you say a ditch. That's usually true." I nod, open the rear door and gather the furnace in my coat. The pup blinks up at me with a patience that isn't human and a curiosity that is. It places one paw on my chest, right over my sternum, and presses once. Stamp, claim, blessing, curse. Yes. Hart steps close. He hooks a finger under the ribbon and doesn't pull, just lifts, reads, sets it back. "Don't cut it," he says. "If it comes off, it's because somebody meant it." "Who?" He shrugs. "You'll know the moment before you do." He walks me to my car like a man walking a friend to a cliff and telling him about air. Before I climb in, he touches the chain marks on my wrists with his eyes. "Next time," he says, and the words have the gravity of weather, "you draw your salt line straighter." "I will," I say. "Mean it," he says. I do. He steps back, hands in pockets, looking at me like he wishes cigarettes still. Counted as prayer. Go on, days wasting time deciding what it is. I drive. The pup sleeps. The road unwinds. The radio, when I try it, gives me a preacher talking about a lion with no respect for fences. I turn it off and listen to the kind of quiet that leaves space for a bell if it wants one. On the last stretch before home, a pine stands on the shoulder with red slashes on its bark. Maybe survey paint. Maybe a reminder written in a hand the county pretends it can't read. I ease off the gas. I don't stop. Some signs are for your legs, not your wheels. I pull into my driveway with a heart that has learned a new beat. I carry the pup inside and lay it on a folded blanket in the corner where morning light gathers like cheap gold. It sighs as if opening a drawer with care. Its eyes slip closed, the ribbon shifts, the bell keeps its counsel. I fetch salt from the pantry and draw a line at the threshold. Straight, this time. I mean it with the part of me that used to aim vows at ceilings and now aims them at floors. I set iron by the door. I hang a horseshoe over the back window because Hart's mother would approve. I text no one. I open the curtains. I stand where day can find me. The house settles into daylight the way a body settles into a new scar. The heater ticks. The fridge lies about its age. The sink offers a sigh. Under the window, the pup dreams, legs twitching, mouth making small sounds like it's tasting old snow. When it wakes, it will be hungry for meat and rules. I will fail it sometimes. I will get better. At noon, a cloud crosses the sun like a hand. I stop what I'm doing, washing blood out of a towel with a lie ready for later, and listen, because listening is what love turned into. I hear nothing but the normal insults of daytime. At dusk, I make soup I don't eat and put a bowl of water on the floor because all creatures forgive water. The pup drinks like it's closing a deal. The ribbon hums when it lowers its head, and the sound paints a line across the air that my ear will learn to read. At midnight, I sit by the door with salt under one hand and the other on a chain laid across my knees like a question I don't want to need the answer to. The pup sprawls belly up, arrogant with trust. In the yard, the long shadow of the slashed pine shares the grass with the fence I pay taxes for. The moon comes up late, cheap, half bright, a coin you flip because you like the sound. At 3:07 a.m., the world inhales. I feel it before I hear it. The way pressure changes before a storm. The way halls in hospitals know when a heart monitor is thinking about an idea. The pup's ears stand. The hair on my arms wakes like grain in wind. The night leans on the house the way a friend leans when he wants to know if your door's locked. Then it comes. One howl. Just one. Not a chorus, not a conversation. A single line thrown across distance like a rope. It starts low, climbs careful, holds steady in the bright place where you cannot speak without meaning it, and then falls like a promise kept. In it is hunger, yes, and law, yes, and winter, yes, and something else you don't get from weather or teeth. In it is a memory of a kitchen where pancakes charred, and we called it flavor. The pup answers with a sound too small to travel, but big enough to stamp a heart. I do not. I press my palm into salt and keep my mouth broken. When the howl dies, the night does not fill the silence with threats. It leaves the silence alone like a room where someone is sleeping. I breathe. The chain is light on my knees. The house is a ship. The door is a door. The line is straight, I mean it. Somewhere beyond the slashed pines, rules and hunger negotiate what morning owes them. Here, in the small country of my floor, a furnace with eyes sleeps under a ribbon that hasn't chosen a final language, and me, mapless, indebted, awake, I sit very still and let the dark pass through. When the first rumor of daylight returns, just a bruise fading from the eastern fence, I stand, stretch, test the door. It holds. Outside, the snow remembers shapes no one else believes in and does not correct them. I go to the pup, kneel, touch its paw. It thumps an answer like a stamp, like a yes. We both look toward the window at the same moment without discussing it, as if a bell barely audible to humans and obvious to promises has rung once. The horizon blushes. The day negotiates terms, and from the ridge, thin as a thread you'd sew a wound with, the second howl comes, further off than before, cleaner. A bright line drawn on a map that includes this house now. I don't answer. I mean it. And for a heartbeat long enough to be a life, I believe we might make it to dawn.